Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of Zede Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, Zede and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue.
And I'm Zede Donahue.
And we're continuing our garment sewing skills series. I think this is episode number 4. And we're going to talk a little bit about pattern adjustments.
Hey, Maple Stitch.
Hey, Maple Stitch. Crystal. Her name is
Crystal.
Crystal.
Ooh, I like that. I wish my name was like Diamond or Emerald or something. I knew a girl named Velvet once.
Too bad.
Shouldn't I have been named like
your
Velvet?
name is Zede.
Or Silk or something?
Chiffon. Okay, so...
Polly, Esther.
Polly, Esther.
My first name could be Polly and my middle name could be Esther.
So pattern
And
adjustments...
my last name could be like Green or Pink or something, like Polyester Green.
I guess. All right. Mom's fantasies. Moving on. Okay, so pattern adjustments. We almost hesitate to do this episode because we can't give a lot of real specific instructions. Like we're going to be
Because
painting,
everybody's a different shape for one thing.
We're going to be painting a lot of big brush stroke sort of pictures for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got a couple examples from Ginger Jeans.
Okay.
Okay, that I think I'd like to share.
Okay.
And then we can kind of go from there.
Right.
So something that I see a lot on the interwebs, and calm down, Mom, it's okay. I'm gonna address it. It's all right. She's gonna blood's gonna boil over.
No.
People say take your biggest measurement and just cut out that pattern.
And that is commonly what we've all been taught.
Right.
For eons.
And
since they started making
patterns.
Right.
Yeah. And so
manufactured patterns.
we tried that with Sam's jeans.
Well, it doesn't work for me either at all.
It does. I don't know that it really works for anybody.
When people talk about, pants are so hard to fit, it's kind of funny because pants fit me better than anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a butt, for one thing. But I have more trouble at the top.
Yes. So anyway, when we kind of got our formula down for Ginger Jeans, I think this might be kind of a nice thing to share in this podcast. So what I did was I took people's measurements. I took their waist measurement and their hip measurement. And Heather Lou, the pattern designer behind Ginger Jeans and Closet Case Files, has a sizing chart. And her sizing chart has bust, waist, and hips because she's got other patterns. She's got bathing suit patterns and bodysuit patterns and jeans patterns. So we kind of went by that, and we'd take their waist and their hip measurement, and we'd be like, oh, you're like a 14 here, but a 16 here, or whatever, and kind of look at that. And I'd be like, all right. But then Heather has a really handy chart on her Ginger Jeans pattern that says finished garment measurements.
Right. And that makes a bit
super duper.
That's I love, and all patterns should say that.
Yeah, I think
and
so
only
too.
some do.
So they say finished garment measurement. And so we let's see where your hips are. And I'm making this up because I do not see this in front of me. So, you look at it and you've got a 42-inch hips, and Heather's got a size that has, 40-inch hips and 43-inch hips. And you're like, ooh. But you read Heather's website and you read the pattern, and she says that she's got negative ease in these jeans because they're stretchy.
They're stretch jeans, and you want they're form-fitting. Right.
Yeah. So we would be recommended to go to that smaller hip size, actually. Now, she also has another finish.
Oh, to the smaller?
Yeah, to the smaller one. Okay. Negative ease.
She wants you to have negative ease.
She says these should fit like they are skin tight.
Yeah.
And she says that. And you need to use whatever information you're given. So we'd go with that smaller hip, but let's pretend like this person was whatever, an 18, but then their waist was smaller and it looked 16 or 14-ish. So Heather's got another finished measurement on there, which is the rise. Okay. And the rise on her pattern was from crotch, like I called it the 4 corners, like where your crotch seams meet down there in between your legs.
Right between your where the baby comes out.
Yeah, there you go. And you would go right there and measure up. Okay, so I took this lady's hip measurement. She's an 18, and I looked at the 18 rise. Okay, and it's let's pretend it's 9 inches. So I measured up 9 inches. And there there, at that point, it's not her natural waist. It's where the jeans are going to sit.
Right.
It's where that pattern's where that pattern's jeans are going to fit. And I made some kind of mark, or I had them put their finger there, and I measured around that part of their body where those jeans were going to fit, and I compared the measurement of that part to the finished garment measurement of the waist of that size of jean.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I compared that to that finished garment measurements. And then we decided, oh, this is going to be way big on your waist because you have a much more tapered waist. So we're going to go down a size. And this is where this pattern adjustment comes in.
And does she have multi-size pattern?
Yes. And yes, this is why, and we talked about this.
And when we're talking about multi-size pattern, what it is you've got one piece of paper that this pattern's on, and it has all of the pattern sizes printed on top of each other, basically.
Nested is a good word.
That's a very good word. So you've got 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22, whatever.
Who do we appreciate?
Right. Now, sometimes there will have two pattern pieces. So they'll have maybe like the size 8 to size 16 on one, and then size 18 to 24 or something on another.
Right, sure.
Because there is, there's such a big difference or whatever.
Or you don't want to waste papers.
But these are graded.
Yes.
So for those sizes.
So then we could actually take our tracing paper, lay it over the pattern that we got from Heather, and we could trace 14 up at the hips and blend out to the 16 or the 8 or whatever the heck I was saying earlier. And we didn't, no, we didn't just cut out the 18 for this person who clearly was at a smaller size waist. We would have wasted a lot of time.
Well, and the other thing, this is when I talked about, in our last episode, I talked about measure where you took that hip measurement from. Okay, because you're saying your widest part was, say, a 16, and your smaller part was, what, a 14 or a 12? I don't know, whatever.
Sure.
So, okay, where was the widest part, and then where did that happen? So I can measure, it happened 6 3/4 inches down. So that's where I want it to be the biggest, and I put a little mark, and then I go up to my 14, and then I take, my dress curve or French curve, what you're using, and I grade a seam there.
Yeah, and this is so
important.
Or
a cutting line. Yeah.
This is so important because this sounds complicated, but if you have ever used a ruler, it's not. Okay, make lots of marks on your body, and you're like, okay, well, right here is where these jeans are going to fit, and 6, 7 inches down, 9 inches down is my widest part. Okay, that's where I've got to get out to that widest part with my tracing. And doing that work ahead of time, here's what it does for you. I didn't have to redraft a waistband. We used size 14's
you
waistband.
Knew which size waistband.
We used size 14's. Actually, get this. Use size 14's back yokes too.
Right.
We used all
it had yokes. Right.
Yeah. So you do all this kind of like measurement thinking work.
Right.
Thinky time work, and you are actually making it easier on yourself. So just keep that in mind. Now, it is nice to have some kind of person like helping you along, of course. And there have been lots of sew-alongs for these ginger jeans.
Right.
I'll link to a few. There's one girl, I can't remember her name right now, but she had a really extreme difference between waist and hips. And she talks about her process, and her jeans just look fabulous on her. And that's a big problem. Well, it's common in the sewing community because that's why a lot of people are sewing, because they have a big difference between waist and hips, and so they can't find clothes to fit them. But doing these measurements can help you with your pattern adjustments. So that's kind of my big current relevant experience with pattern adjustment right now. But there are markings on patterns, like lengthen, shorten lines.
Right, lengthen, shorten lines. And we talked about that a lot of times refers to the petiteness. How short is your torso?
Uh-huh.
And I will caution people when it comes to hems on things.
Yeah.
Okay, they think they just have to cut the bottom off, and that's not always true.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will need to shorten that pattern somewhere in the midsection, whether it's the body of the skirt or the body of the pant or the body of, the torso, if it's a shirt, and then ease those seams back together.
Right.
Because a skirt flares now, a lot of times on me, sometimes I do want to cut the bottom of the skirt off because I don't want that big flare because I am so short.
Sure.
So it really, really depends.
And
you have to think about it.
There might be 2 lengthen shorten lines on the same pattern
Absolutely.
piece.
Like one high in the torso, maybe one like in the hips, which is your crotch depth or on something.
And so you get the, like on the ginger jeans, there's one like in the kind of crotch area, and there's one in the leg. And actually there's one lady, we did her measurements and stuff, and the high-rise jeans were still going to be pretty low on her. And so I was like, man, I haven't had to do this for anybody else.
But make her some
But we added an inch, and it's perfect. And I was like, cool. So I was a little sort of like, okay, this is, no one else has needed this. We've made jeans for like 13 people now, 14 people, and no one had needed this yet, but she did, and so, and it wasn't hard, and there are instructions in there. You split the pattern. And
I think the more you sew, you're sewing for other people. If you're only sewing for yourself or a couple other people, you'll get used to someone's body.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, you had 11 or 12 people you were sewing for, and you're like, oh, all of these went this way, and now I've got somebody who's not like that. And it's funny when that happens, and you feel insecure about it.
Yeah, I was sort of like, all right, I haven't had to do this, and I feel like I kind of have a long torso, and I didn't have to do that for myself.
Actually, I think you have a sort of an average regular size torso and short legs.
Really short legs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is not too bad of a problem, really, honestly.
So anyway, but if you do, those lengthen shorten lines are lines on a pattern. But Mom, do you have a personal story about a pattern adjustment? So it's covered my personal story and some, those lines that can be on the pattern. Now, would you like to share something, or you just draft all your own?
Well, drafting is the most fabulous thing you can do if you want something. I guess the I have stories because I've sewn for other people, and I think my stories are more about diplomacy than pattern fitting sometimes. I had a lady one time who kept saying tighter, 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 and this was a Dupioni silk, tunic and a pair of pants that were supposed to be semi-flowy that she was wearing on her son's beach wedding. And I kept saying, I don't, you want to be able to move. You want to be comfortable. And I just didn't want to say to her, it's not going to make you look better.
Right.
I mean, I tried all my diplomacy. And I've heard you use diplomacy with people when sometimes they don't know their body. You think they do. And, they've already got in mind what their body is, and it's not. And she was leaving on a cruise, and all I could think of is all the food that was on these cruises.
Right.
And I was she kept saying, no, I want it tighter, I want the tunic tighter. And I know what she wanted. She wanted a slim, long look.
She wanted a shape. Yeah.
Right. And funny because the woman had a very nice shape.
Sure.
Well, I sewed it together just like she wanted. She came back from the cruise, and we couldn't get the tunic on her.
Yeah.
She was like, and the pants were like sausage casings. I mean, she could have been bloated too, whatever. I left huge seam allowances. Which I have never done before.
Sure.
Okay.
Like
but
big seam allowances.
I just felt like it was too tight already. I mean, that she was going to want there was no ease. I mean, it was like negative ease, like you said. And, I had to remake the entire thing. I had to basically take it apart and recut it. So I made that woman's garment twice.
Yeah,
basically because she wouldn't listen to me.
Right.
And I kind of knew, I would have much rather made it bigger and taken it down for her.
Well, and, being diplomatic, it's kind of funny because occasionally I'll, be real diplomatic, and then it's, not coming across the person, or the person's asking questions, and I'm like, I'll just say, I'll be like, well, you've got really big hips for your size. And they're like, I know.
Well, or sometimes I'll just look at somebody, especially with the bra thing, and I'll say, so how frank would you allow me to be here? And they'll go, oh, no, tell me. And a lot of times what I'll get is, because I'm busty and people realize I'm small and I'm busty and my boobs look pretty good, right? Even though I'm an old woman. Now, they don't look good without the bra, but I mean, I do look pretty good in my clothes. And they'll look at me and they'll go, "Oh no, I trust you because I see how you look," which is a positive for me because they trust I'm an example.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I fit people and if I touch myself, like my body, that sounds kind of dirty. I'm not like, anyway.
No, it doesn't.
But
That's
fine,
fine,
if I put my hands at my underbust and I say something like this right here, or I've like pulled up you show off your bra in class all the time.
I do. I kind of flash a lot in class.
I've pulled up my shirt before and like shown the high-rise jeans on my, belly or something like that. And that seems to make people more comfortable. But, I am in this situation. I'm teaching people to sew for themselves. And you were sewing a thing for a person, which is a different story.
It is a different story. But I'm trying to think it. Well,
what do you do for your full bust?
Well, first of all, I do draft my own patterns.
Because we're get so many comments that
I know about drafting.
Shut up already and make some damn videos.
I'm so sorry, everybody. Okay. So say when I was trying to teach myself to sew when I was 13 or 14 years old, and the instructions were buy the pattern for your bust, right?
Uh-huh.
It was telling me I wore like a 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I was this little bitty 5 foot, 106-pound girl. And they were telling me I was in a 16, which also made the hips like, my hips were like 34 and the hips on this pattern were like 46 or something.
Which is just not
right.
It's not your hip measurement.
I had this big, huge thing that the only thing that fit in it were my boobs.
Right.
The armholes were huge, and also it was too long in the armholes. This didn't fit. So that was sort of where I realized I was going to have to start buying a pattern that basically fit my back and my underbust measurement. Okay.
And then add for your bust.
And so what you should know is most patterns, commercial patterns, are drafted for a size B cup. And that hasn't changed. And a B cup means your undercup measurement. Well, let's say
bust measurement.
Your under bust measurement is 2 inches less than your bust measurement. So you'd be like, if I had a B size cup, I would be 30 inches in my under bust, and I would be 32 inches, okay, in my bust. Well, I'm so far from that.
Right.
It's ridiculous. But I learned how to put a big, huge dart, and I just think I had woven fabrics. I didn't even really have knit fabrics to work with.
And this has a hashtag and like a new face to it. It's called a full bust adjustment, and you'll see it like hashtag FBA.
Right. And then I didn't have to. And the other thing I learned was measuring how far apart those shoulder seams were. Because I actually have broad shoulders, nice square broad shoulders, which is nice, but they don't fit in that pattern. They don't fit with the larger pattern. They're not big enough, and with the smaller pattern, the pattern's not big. So I've always been, and it's been so long since I've used a commercial pattern, I just don't know anymore.
I'm just gonna lock Zede in a room with a camera and make her
sorry,
film
guys.
all this stuff. No, you might not have to say sorry.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, and this goes no matter whose pattern you're using, whether it's your own draft or whatever. You've got that pattern, you cut it out, and you need to make a muslin. Okay, it doesn't have to be out of muslin. It probably should sort of be some sort of muslin or lightweight cotton type fabric. Not too lightweight, but say quilting weight would be good. You really need, now what you did with the ginger jeans is you used that fabric as your muslin. You basted everything.
Yeah, and that's kind of a different story, but
the ideal thing is you will make that pattern out of fabric, sew it together, put it on, and you will figure out what adjustments you need to make, and then you will transfer them to your pattern. Now, you only have to do this once.
Right.
Because you just need that basic shape, and then that basic shape can be transferred to anything, anytime.
And if you have those pattern blocks too, and so let's say you've drafted your shirt pattern, okay? And then you're like, oh no, but I love this pattern designer's shirt that they did. buy that pattern, and then you can kind of hold up your pattern to it, and you can get
you can take their pattern pieces and adjust them to fit your pattern.
That's what I mean.
Right.
Like you can, you have that flat reference now. The great challenge of garment sewing is taking flat things and making them three-dimensional.
Go on round, bumpy bodies.
Yes.
Right.
So if you've got your flat patterns and you're like, oh, well, I have my shirt front or my skirt back or whatever, and you line it up there, you're like, oh, sure, I'll just add an inch or take away a little bit.
That's right. Oh, I want a pleat here. I want a flounce here, whatever.
But I still got her, whatever, the collar that this person designed that I just love so much.
And honestly, any patterns that I've bought probably in the last 20 years, I bought for the pictures.
Yes.
Or for that
Design
pattern piece.
element.
I said, ooh, that pattern piece. Okay, let me see. Maybe I like the way they've drafted it, and I don't have to draft my own, and I can just adjust. So I've done that. Bought things that had a certain kind of collar on a blouse or something like that. Just so I didn't especially when they were on sale for maybe 99 cents or something.
And especially like a pattern that has some like really cool design detail. There's this pattern company, and I want to carry their patterns, and we don't yet. It's called Decades of Style, and they make all these vintage inspired or like vintage patterns that have these really cool design details. And I think, oh yeah, like I would buy that pattern. I don't like to buy just any pattern. And I would buy that pattern because that collar on there, that 3-layered collar, is just so cool, and it's worth my time not to draft that, myself.
Right. I mean, what you're paying for is the drafting.
Yeah. So I think maybe we can wrap up this episode, and the next and final episode in this series is going to be about fabric types and fabric selection for your patterns, with a little bit of talk about how fabrics fit in with things like ease and stuff like that.
And I've got a really good story actually for that.
Well, so do I.
I think mine's better. I don't know.
We shall see.
We shall see.
Thanks for listening.
So long and so happy.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.